Okay, so now we're recording. Hi, everyone. Thank you for staying with us. My name is Joshua Moore. I'm the shorts programmer for SF Indie Fest. I hope you continue to see more short film programs, and we're lucky to have some of the filmmakers for this program with us here today, shorts number 3, called Teachers. Thank you all for taking the time to be with us here. I'd like to start with asking each one of you, how did you find the subjects of your film and what compelled you to want to to document their story, to make their film, make your film? So let's start with Brandon.
Absolutely. Sort of from the beginning, I had been working with a local company based in the Bay Area, cannabis technology company called PAX, and they produce high-end, like premium cannabis vaporizer technology company. And they approached me with this project, and they really just wanted to make something, with at the heart of filmmaking, nothing really product related or anything. So it was kind of a dream phone call to get from any client, really. And it was super exciting to get to know who this guy, Dennis Perone, was. So I really had no idea who Dennis was going into this. And it was really, over a year of exploration and research, finding out who Dennis Perone was and what he did in his life. And yeah, so that's kind of how that began.
Right, thank you for sharing. Aaron, tell us about how you found your subject and what compelled you to make this film.
Absolutely. Well, I would say it came out of probably a very relatable moment that we all had right around March 11th of 2020. That was the day that everything, or around that date that everything shut down. As a both, I support myself as a commercial filmmaker and then also as a dramatic filmmaker. Everything just stopped. I also work as an actor, so just everything ended. Now, on top of that, my wife and I, we live in Atlanta, Georgia, and my wife is a second-year medical resident at Emory. And so she was going into the hospital every day, and it was just crazy, man. I think everybody had like a crazy moment, but I certainly know for me, it was just crazy. And the existential dread was pouring down on top of me. So literally just to keep myself from crying or something, I just grabbed my camera and just started walking around my neighborhood, filming the streets all deserted, and as a ways to keep myself busy. And at some point during the course of the day, I ended up getting a phone call from my really good friend Cecile McLaurin Salvant, whose music is featured at the end of my film. Incredible multi-Grammy award-winning, now MacArthur Fellow Cecile McLaurin Salvant. We talked on the phone about just how crazy this everything was. And so fortunately, she kind of like really helped kind of get my inspiration flowing, that this would be a really important time to try to document and just to try to like express that sense of dread. And the film really came out of that conversation and out of that moment of just pure filmmaking necessity to keep from going crazy.
Yes, I think we can all relate to that. Brian, tell us inspiration for your film.
Of course. Several years ago, my daughter was in grade school at the time, and she was doing some volunteer work, some social hours, service hours. And she was volunteering at Mercy Home in Oakland, just to help and, with some of the residents there. So she was working with a woman, Erin Partridge, who is an art therapist at Mercy Home. And Emily, my daughter, is very artistic. She gets that from her grandfather, my late father-in-law, who was an artist, a fine artist. And we lost him because of Alzheimer's. Well, Erin works with memory patients with art therapy. So there was a obvious connection between, my daughter and Erin and what she was doing with these people, with these residents. And as time went on, Emily continued to volunteer there for some time. And as I got to know Erin better and would see how she was working with residents, I realized that her story was actually a very rich story, and I began to understand that the power and impact of art was substantial, and the impact that it had with the residents, sometimes that were very far along with Alzheimer's and dementia patients, and making that connection and giving patients a voice that really had no ability to voice. And I just kind of dug in and wanted to hear Erin's story and why she does what she does, and hopefully, shine a little bit of light on what art can do for dementia and Alzheimer's patients.
Thank you. Paul, tell us how you found your subject and what was the inspiration?
Yeah, so I was actually working on another film that's since then kind of been put on hold, like a lot of projects. And I was filming in just this random bar in Brooklyn. And I walked in, and this guy, in his 70s, asked me if I would film him. And he kind of had a long white beard, very kind of like disheveled looking. And I was just like, and I was feeling really sick. And I said, I'd love to help you, but I'm just not feeling really well right now, and I kind of turned him down. And about 10 minutes later, a woman came up to me and said, "How much does it cost to film?" And I said, I'm just working on a film, I'm not feeling well, but the way she said it, and she said, "My husband is having his debut today." I just thought, I can't say no to this person. They're just too sweet, So I agreed. I said, "Look, if I'm not passing out, by the end of the set, then I'll film you." And so I stayed on. And he went into the back. This is like a little dive bar in Brooklyn, but he went into this little dressing area and came out wearing this like white smoking jacket, these amazing white shoes. And I was just like, I don't know if this is like a birthday thing. Like I had no idea what to expect, but obviously I was kind of expecting the worst, and then as soon as he started playing, my sort of like my jaw kind of dropped, because I was just like, man, this is like, one of those rarer and rarer sort of New York City moments where you're actually hearing like amazing music, and I was there to actually experience it, and I happened to be filming it. So it became very, very obvious very quickly that, this is a very talented person with a lot of texture and a lot of stories, and so he put on the whole set, and, the songs were just tremendous. And, he was in his early 70s, and I thought, well, that's kind of an awesome story, and it's inspiring in so many ways. Both in terms of his story and also just New York City. Like, these things still happen, like New York City. And I lived in San Francisco, so I know San Francisco is kind of going through the same thing, where it's just not quite what it used to be. But when you get these pockets of art, I just wanted to embrace it. So I thought, what, this needs to be documented however way I can. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'm always interested in tone when it comes to film, whether it's documentary or fiction films. Once you have your idea, the story that you want to tell, but how do you settle on kind of the tone and style of your film? So let's go back to Brandon.
Yeah, absolutely. Tone is everything. So I approached this project really during the research phase. I sort of unearthed a lot of incredible footage about Dennis and his fight for making cannabis legal medicine for a variety of things. Mainly at the time, late 80s, early 90s, we were at the height of the AIDS epidemic. So in his sort of strategy was interesting in that he opened the first cannabis club to patients essentially at the time. And his approach for the media attention was to embrace it instead of shy away from it and keep a closed door to what was going on in these cannabis clubs. So the media's documentation and portrayal really played a huge role in the overall tone of the film, and how the shift in that tone from cannabis thought of as, a joke to be medicine no one would have ever thought. It's illegal. coming out of the war on drugs, and then slowly shifting the tide to seeing who these people are in these cannabis clubs, seeing that they look like your grandma, and eventually you can hear just the inflection in the reporting that was happening completely changed from this sort of cynical take of cannabis as medicine to a more serious, people were actually changing their minds about this. And it was a huge, it was incredible to see that within all this archival footage digging through it. So I really wanted to see that transformation happen throughout the film. So from, a tonal standpoint, I sort of started off with this kind of, jokey, the district attorney calling cannabis this Cheech and Chong show, all the way to these reporters getting behind this movement and supporting the people that were fighting towards this.
Thank you.
Yep.
Let's see, I think your positionings on my screen change was, I think, Brian, you were second. So let's go back to you.
Happy to go next. If you've ever had anyone close to you suffering from Alzheimer's, you know what a horrific disease it is, and to see somebody slip away gradually and essentially lose them, and you lose them before they're gone. And so the idea of the tone of this was easy, because what you hear talking to Erin, who's the art therapist, that she finds there is still a person there, and she's sometimes able to make that connection and bring that person out. So the tone of hope and inspiration that's her story. So that was easy to just tap into, and really just a question of getting out of the way. And the way she tells it, it's she, every time she talks about it, she's very emotional, because it comes from a very heartfelt place. And I just wanted to hopefully capture that story.
Yeah, absolutely. Erin, tell us about how you found the tone and style for your film.
Yeah, well, just like the two previous filmmakers that spoke, I totally agree that the tone has to come out of an organic place in the story. I always make mistakes if I try to overimpose a tone onto a film. And for making a film about the first couple weeks of the COVID-19 shutdown, it came out of my direct experience, which is this very surreal state where you look at your phone, you look at the news, and the world just seems like it's going crazy. And then the second you turn your phone off, you look around and everything is as boring as it could possibly be, because nothing is happening. So I knew I wanted the film to try to straddle that fence of just total insanity and extreme monotony. And so I I had just to fill time, I'd been watching a bunch of Tarkovsky movies, not to invoke the name of Tarkovsky. God forgive me, but his insistence on these super long push-in shots, and I wanted to play with that as a way to kind of can we go full throttle for a 3-minute cut of just as cutty as I could get, and then try to downshift it into this extreme kind of Tarkovskian push to try to capture that feeling. So that was what I went for.
All right, thank you. Paul, how did you come up with the style and tone for your film?
I think, I kind of find, it just kind of came out. I think the attitude was very DIY from the start. It's sort of when I started hanging out with Ratto, was the main character, and I started filming him for this recording. So I have a dog here. And,
no problem.
It's a very sort of DIY Brooklyn indie kind of atmosphere, because it's meant to reflect. Sorry. How bad is that on the mic? Is it pretty bad?
I mean, we can hear it, but that's life. We're on
This
Zoom.
is the world that we live in these days.
Yeah. So anyway, so he, you know, I wanted to kind of recreate the Brooklyn indie DIY vibe, you know, so I don't think I shot a single thing except for maybe you know, some concert footage on sticks. I just kind of kept it handheld, kind of moved it around just because it was very lowly lit. I mean, it was very kind of literal, I think, up until the very end, where it gets a little more um, poetic when you start hearing the music and you find out what's behind the music, and that, you know, someone died and there's this horrible tragedy. Then I kind of stabilized it a bit, and I have this very long shot that's kind of meant to speak to that sort of emptiness and childhood and all these things, you know. But I think that's the only time where I sort of use the imagery as some kind of a metaphor, you know, for the message, other than just kind of being sloppy, kind of on purpose, because everything in Brooklyn, everything in Ratso's life, everything about the album is just very organic, very natural, and very authentic. So I just wanted to replicate that.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'd also like to talk a little bit about the relationship between director and subject, or in your case, Aaron, director and actor. For you, Brandon, your subject is no longer living. So what is that relationship like for you, seeing your subject in archival footage? And did you, you know, have any other family or friends that of him that you consulted with?
Yeah. So like a lot of projects, like every project in filmmaking, you're gonna get some huge restrictions or hurdles that you have to sort of navigate to figure out how you're going to tell your story. And I initially was a little nervous about how can I do justice to someone's life and without them necessarily having the final, you know, thumbs up. And discovering sort of who Dennis was through all this archival footage was a really, really special process. And sort of getting to know him through the public portrayal of, you know, what he was doing in the public eye, but also on a personal level, you know, going through all of his personal photos and talking with, you know, he was a very social person. He always lived with tons of people in this place called the Castro Castle in the Castro district in San Francisco. And I was super fortunate enough to get connected the very first sort of beginnings of the project with his spouse, John Entwistle Jr. Dennis was, you know, veteran out gay man since, you know, the early 70s, late 60s. And he just had an incredible community of friends always surrounding him. So luckily, a lot of those people are still alive today, John included. He's just an incredible resource. He actually lives still at the Castro Castle. That's where we did a lot of the shooting, and he just was a wealth of knowledge it was the closest thing to talking to Dennis himself. So I felt really good about if it had his approval, then it was all good. So I was super fortunate to have a lot of incredible people that really lived this history along Dennis's side, to sort of find out who this guy was.
Thank you. Brian, tell us about the relationship that you had with your subject and the residents there. How did you earn the trust and capture them?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point about trust, because obviously very sensitive. You know, these are residents, Alzheimer's patients, and there is a lot of sensitivity about how to work with them, deal with them, build their trust. I had known Aaron for a couple of years, as I mentioned, because my daughter was volunteering, and so she and I had built a bit of a relationship, and she certainly trusted, and I wanted to honor that relationship that I had built with her, my daughter had built with her with the nursing home, and the residents knew me, at least, you know, by sight, so there was a comfort level. So it made that job much easier. I think if I were to walk into a situation without knowing any of the principles, that would be very difficult. It'd be a heavy lift. It would take time to build that organic kind of trust.
Right. Thank you. Aaron, tell us about the relationship that you had with your actor and what that trust issue was like with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would be honored to. So the actor in my film is, his name is Cooper Buca. And, you know, as I'm sure all of you will relate, you know, my entire creative life has been, you know, enriched, but also many times like strained by like the search for collaborators. I mean, film is such a collaborative art form, and I'm constantly looking for, you know, the people that you work well with, and sometimes it works out and it's great, but then they move on, and you know, we're kind of in these constantly shifting ephemeral relationships. And I can honestly say, of all the good things that happened in 2020, my working relationship with this actor, Cooper Buca, it was just the greatest thing. This was the first project that we did together, and it was literally because I was out shooting in my neighborhood, and I called him up. I wake up pretty early. He wakes up pretty late, so he didn't get back to me till like 11:30, and I was like, you know, you want to come over and just like jump into this movie I'm making? And he was like, yeah, dude, of course. So he showed up, and that's how he did it. But since then, I mean, we have now done music videos, other short films, commercial projects. I mean, we work together all the time, and I am just like so grateful and blessed for this creative collaboration that in many ways all started with this little film. So yeah, Cooper's amazing. So glad he picked up the phone.
Well, congratulations. It's always wonderful when you find that co-conspirator.
Yeah, totally.
Paul, tell us about the relationship with you and Ratso. He's such an eccentric character. What was it like earning his trust and documenting him?
Well, I mean, I think like, you know, Nick Cave actually says that in the film, you know, that he's just a really sweet guy, and that's just the truth. You know, you definitely don't know what to expect from him. You know, I kind of alluded to that in the beginning, right? You know, he has this look and you just don't know how to interpret that, you know, and so it definitely could have gone in a million directions. And when I approached him, you know, after the show, yeah, I just didn't know, you know, how he would react. And he was just always super nice. And I think for me, the trick is to just, you know, I film best people that I could be friends with or am friends with, you know, because then you have that natural trust, and you can kind of, you don't have to sort of navigate, you know, barriers as much. You don't have to ask yourself or each other what your motivations are. You can just kind of be there together. You understand each other, and it just kind of naturally comes. So I think that's what happened there, you know, and you know, and we're still in touch. You know, we still talk. So I think. We just kind of had a natural rapport, and I think he's a super easy guy to go along with. So I have a hard time imagining anybody not getting along with him, you know. So yeah, there was no real mystery there. He's very, in terms of, you know, approach, he's very open and very accessible.
And what was his impression of the film once he saw it?
He liked it. I mean, you know, the intent was really to do a feature, and then you know, we cut the short just to see what, you know, how that's coming together, and whether, you know, we could make a feature. And we're still thinking about it, but so he saw a couple of versions of the short, and he seemed to like the first one better, but fine, but he seemed to like this one more. So you know, so I think he likes it. You know, I haven't, and he sent it out to a bunch of his friends, and you know, from what he says, everybody likes it. So either that's true, or he's just being polite.
Right. So I'd like to ask everybody, during the course of your shooting, or maybe in the editing room, was there a moment that you had that really clicked for you, where you felt like the film that you had in your head is actually being realized, it's working? Let's start with Brandon.
Yeah, I had that moment a few times. I'd say even before the edit really started coming together, I keep going back to this, but all the archival footage, it's like you find, like as a filmmaker, it's like a treasure trove. You're like foraging the internet for, these pieces of this person's life, and you're putting all the pieces together, and you want to also be honest about it as well. So you're creating this story out of all of these little moments. And so I had a few times where it was definitely like goosebumps finding, like unearthing some of these, pieces of footage that I would have never found had I gone down this rabbit hole of research. And I guess that moment happened as well, like when the edit started to come together, and figuring out, what are like the most pivotal moments in this guy Dennis Peron's life. Like what were the things that really left like a lasting change. And I couldn't just it was hard to describe, like when you're editing, because you're just kind of in this tunnel vision hole, and then when you sort of like realize when it starts to actually create a story. And I think when that moment happened, I just was it. The hardest thing about it is getting it down to what runtime you want it to. So like I could have created a feature out of this, but I was luckily, I think I'm pretty happy with where I ended up getting to as far as runtime, and being able to get hit all the points that I wanted to hit in the story that I felt were the most important representation of Dennis's achievements. So yeah, lots of moments of goosebumps, and that's kind of what makes you realize, like, oh, that's why I started doing this, like in this first place. Like this is why I make films, like to uncover these amazing stories and just do them justice.
What was one of those pieces of footage that you mentioned that kind of gave you those goosebumps? Do you remember an example of that?
So one in particular, in the very beginning, when I was first starting my research, I really wanted to get viewers inside one of these cannabis clubs as it was back in those days. And it was really hard to find footage of that. I had photos, but photos don't really do it quite. It doesn't give you that third dimension.
Right.
So weirdly enough, I was scouring YouTube, and I was, just typing in all the possible search terms that could have related to that, cannabis club, San Francisco, cannabis buyers club, San Francisco. And I unearthed this film. It was exactly what I needed. It was testimonies of people in the club, but also just nice like verite stuff where you're kind of just watching little intimate moments unfold with people in the club, smoking, talking, laughing, enjoying themselves, and really get a sense of what these places were like, and without it feeling like a news piece either. This was the weirdest part about it was that where the footage came from, and I had to figure out like who this was to get clearance for it. And it happened to be this guy, Richard, was his name Richard Gale? I can't remember, but basically that went down a whole nother crazy research rabbit hole, in that this guy was actually, I believe in San Francisco Chronicle, and he was at one point on the short list for like a suspect for the Zodiac killings. Like, wow. It got really crazy. So I was like, okay, I need to like refocus my attention here, and luckily got a hold of one of his friends that sort of took on his channel, and that sort of gave me his blessing for the footage. And as a filmmaker, you can only do so much when it comes to the person's not alive anymore. They were just there was no intention for the footage to be shot. So that was just one of those really crazy moments where you're just like, holy, what have I stumbled upon here?
Right, right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Brian, what's a moment that you had during your filmmaking that really felt like this movie is clicking into place?
Yeah, I think there are two. There's a story that Erin tells about in the movie where there was a resident who was completely uncommunicative for years, and she was very advanced stage of dementia. And so Erin would always invite all the residents in, and sometimes they would just sit and watch, and sometimes they'd participate, but they were always welcome. So she had at one point taken a paintbrush and just put it in the woman's hand, who was, for all practical purposes, catatonic. And when she did, the woman grabbed the brush and she started making these brush strokes, and it shocked her. And so she did a little bit of questioning, and she found out that this woman was years ago a fine artist. And so it realized that there was this artist still in her, and there was this muscle memory that still existed even after all these years. Just the mere, the tactile of holding a brush, and she would grip it and then start making it. And when she told me that, it's very emotional still when I think about it. So that's a great moment. And then my wife, Eli Olson, is an editor. She edited this, and she knows Erin too, and so just gave her the footage. And so when she started to cut it, it just fell into place naturally.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful moment. Thank you for sharing that. Erin, what was a moment for you during your production?
Yeah, well, honestly, the entire production process felt pretty full of uncertainty and free fall. And to be completely honest, after I switched from acting to filmmaking about 6 years ago, and those 6 years have been filled with nothing but false starts, unfinished projects sitting on hard drives, endless writing that never came to fruition. And Here With Me is the first artistic piece of film that I ever finished. And I think it was only because I had a mentality, pardon my language, but a mentality of just kind of fuck it. I just need to get this done as quickly as possible. So I just cranked the whole thing out in 10 days. And so the whole thing just felt full of uncertainty. And so the moment that it clicked for me is that because I thought it was a piece that was kind of just speaking to a very specific moment in time. When I just kind of put it out on the internet for people to see, and I started getting responses back, of people being really touched by it, which, as an artist, and especially as one who has been doing this for so long, but had been kind of so frustrated and unable to take a project across the finish line, meant the world to me. So it wasn't until after it was out in the world that I had any sort of sense of clicking.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Congratulations again. And Paul, did you have a moment during your filmmaking in post or in production that felt like, wow, this film this is what I want it to be, it's working?
I'm honestly not sure that I did. I kind of, because I set out wanting to make a feature, and I cut it into a short. And I think part of the challenge is that Ratso has had a super, rich, textured life. But my favorite kind of filmmaking is where you just kind of do the verite, fly on the wall, shadow a person as they're going through something. So I kind of envy, you, Brandon, for being able to do it retroactively, because I think, maybe I'm deluded about this, but I think you have more control in a way. Obviously, you can't control what material you find or not find, but you can control the story, I think, in a way, whereas you're at somebody's mercy when you're just kind of shadowing, which is both exciting, but it certainly contributes to the free fall experience, that Erin mentioned, So I think I was kind of going along with it, and there was nothing immediately happening other than recording the music that I thought would have a natural storyline. And I also, for whatever reason, I'm drawn to sort of, sadness and tragic things. And, Ratso's kind of a happy dude, and there's no struggle there, and I was like, well, I'm not going to begrudge him for that, you know. But then I realized, well, he's recording this album about this incredibly, this one song about this incredibly sad moment, you know, and that. So I think for the short film purposes, I think when I realized there's something, you know, incredibly potent here because it's so heartbreaking, and then it ties into his friendships, and it also shows who he is as a person in the world, and also links to this beautiful song that, you know, Huey recorded. I thought, well, this could be sort of the anchor for the whole story for the short version. So I think for the short version, that was kind of the, you know, okay, I got this. It kind of, you know, the seatbelt kind of clicked. My dog is really mad at me, but you know, but that was kind of far along in the game, because the entire time I was thinking I'm editing a feature, you know, so I kind of had to reshift into the short film format.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody. That's all the time we have. But I wanted to thank the audience again for watching this program. I hope you check out more shorts, and please look up all of these filmmakers online on their Vimeo pages, YouTube, their personal sites. Look at the other work that they've done, and let people know about the films that you've just seen. So thank you very much, and thank you all for being here.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for
Thank you,
having
guys.
us.
Congratulations.
Cheers.